Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Federico Talks Watches. Today, I'm once again answering some of your questions, like what are some really nice high-end watches that fly under the radar but still let you do that subtle flex? And of course, what do I think of Omega's in-house calibers? Are they too darn thick? All that and more in today's episode. Now, of course, before we get started, customary wristwatch check. Today I have my H. Moser Pioneer. Haven't worn this one for actually a very long time. Must be a couple months. It looked lonely in the watch box today, so I pulled it out and I remember why I love it. And also, guys, don't forget to check out DelrayWatch.com. We genuinely got in a bunch of new inventory recently, including the cheapest in the country, Rolex GMT Master 2 aluminum bezel with a 2022 Rolex service card. We got in a Blancpain 50 Fathoms, totally unworn, multiple versions of this watch too, bracelet strap, go check them out, and a bunch of unworn Glasuta CQs, different colors, panorama date, chronograph, whatever flavor you want, there's a good chance we have it. All at DelrayWatch.com, the least expensive and best place for a watch geek to buy a watch. Link in the description below. So anyway, guys, these are some of the questions you asked me on Instagram. You know how it works nowadays. Go to my Instagram page. You see a Q&A picture pop up every couple weeks. Ask your question there. When I have enough questions, I take the picture down. Do not DM me. I do not check them. But let's get started in no particular order. Sandwich Time Channel. Hey, Fed, when you travel, do you set your watch at the gate, on the flight, or when you land? Thanks in advance and keep up the great content. Thank you, brother. So I generally travel with a GMT watch, usually my Nomos. And what I do is I don't set it at the gate. I usually board, get seated, make myself comfortable, and then before takeoff, I set the GMT and the time. That way, when I land, I know exactly what time it is, and I can also check my local time. But it's almost always when I get seated on the airplane before takeoff. That is when I do it. Primo Secondo 3 says, big fan of yours, long-standing follower here. Thank you. What do you think of the investigative endeavors of Periscope? So, I actually don't know a lot about Periscope, and if you guys don't know who he is, it's a gentleman by the name of Jose, who's got a pretty great blog and Instagram account where he calls out like auction houses, mainly selling fishy vintage watches. Actually a very famous guy in the community. I'm a little embarrassed that I don't know much about him apart from that. But what do I think? I think they're great. I mean, listen, I don't know Jose personally. I've never spoken to him. I also am very far from knowledgeable when it comes to vintage. And he goes into such great depths, and he's uncovered such big frauds that, what can I say? I'm impressed. Yes, some people say he can be a little rough around the edges when he goes after these people, but, I don't think that's a big deal. I think uncovering the truth is important, and Periscope seems to do that very well. But once again, just a caveat here, this is just for my rudimentary understanding of what he does. Don't know much about him. Haven't followed him for a long time. I just see things pop up on Watch News, and I read it, and from what I gather, he seems to be a very impressive individual. Then we have Krabby Pabby. Hey Fed, was wondering, what are your thoughts on the thickness of Omega in-house calibers? Personally, they seem somewhat excessive. It's not just you that thinks that. Most people do. I mean, overall, I think they're great calibers. Great in-house movements, long power reserves, double barrel, machine decoration, but to a very high degree. Of course, coaxial. But yeah, they're too thick. And I think it's part of the design. You get that extra power reserve because of the thickness. The movements are sturdier because of the thickness. They function great, but this obviously makes the watches very thick. I think a lot of the Planet Oceans are too darn thick. The normal Bond Seamaster is, right on the cusp. I mean, still wearable for me, but still on the thick side. I like their 2500 caliber movements. That's when they put coaxial escapements in ETA 2892s. The 2892 is very thin. I thought that was perfect, but of course Omega has to innovate and come out with in-house movements. I don't blame them for that. But yeah, I mean, I do think, and I think a lot of people think, that they're too darn thick, even though they function very, very well. Watch is let me see here. Fed, what can you recommend? What watch can you recommend that can fly under the radar but still have some subtle flex without attracting too much attention? Okay, so if I get this right, you want a high-end watch that doesn't attract unwanted attention, but when a watch geek sees it, he knows what it is. There's a bunch of options here, but right off the top of my head, the two that come to mind immediately are Langenzona and H. Moser. Not a lot of people know what a Lange or a Moser is. You're not going to be a target for robbery, for example, unless you're wearing like a blinged out version. But when a watch geek sees it on your wrist, they know that's a hell of a fine timepiece. I mean, limited production, high-end movements. Moser's independent, Lange's not, but Lange is probably some of the best movement finishing in the world. And, you know, they hold their value decently well, which you didn't ask for, and I don't think is the most important thing, but it's a plus. But I think a Lange or a Moser is definitely a flex to the right person, but won't give you that unwanted attention. Of course, that is just my opinion. Still a Lazy says, "Hey Fed, love the new watch brand merchandise you guys have on your website. Do you have plans to expand more items?" Yeah, actually we do. So we've expanded them recently. It started with just Rolex stuff. Then we added a couple of AP and Patek things. Now we have some IWC and Parmigiani merchandise. It all depends what authorized dealers offer me for sale, but the selection is growing and ever-changing and actually selling quite well. I didn't think the watch swag would do as well as it did, but it's actually selling pretty darn well, and collectors seem to appreciate adding these non-watch extras to their collection. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more content. And of course, don't forget to check out DelrayWatch.com. Thanks so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.